In this lesson, we're going to be painting some highlights for the blood and merging them back in so that any smearing that occurs with those highlights does not affect the roto paint underneath it. Okay, so let's add another roto paint node and dropped it in right there for us. And I'm just going to place this after the last roto paint that we did. And I'm going to use my brush tool for this. Now I'm going to go into the colors here and we'll just come up here to your color picker. And you want to make sure this is kind of in the red, just all the way at the top. And then come down in your saturation to make kind of a light pink color like that. Okay? And then let's make this a lot smaller. So I'm going to go down to like a 1 and my opacity is going to be like a 0.05. Let's see what that looks like. Pretty good. Okay. Maybe even a little bit lighter than that though. Maybe like a 0.02. There we go. And that hardness is a fine amount. So what we want to do is come in to the areas of our blood that we think look like they could maybe use a highlight and just kind of start painting that. So at first it's going to look a little bit strange because it's not been edited at all to look more like a highlight. It just kind of has this line quality to it that doesn't look very real. So you want to do this kind of on the edges where you would get kind of a surface tension in a liquid like this, or kind of along some of maybe the other ridges that have been painted. Okay, so something like that. Now, if I want to go in and start to kind of smear and smooth these out, I would grab my smear tool again, and if I just smear across, you see how that other piece underneath it gets edited as well. So I don't want to do that. I want to be able to smear these completely without messing with what's underneath. So what I do is I'll pull this out here and we'll grab that transform and drop it back onto the roto paint like it was before. Now you still need your second roto paint, or roto paint 7, to be plugged in to its background as the last roto paint. Otherwise, if you ever wanted to clone anything, it wouldn't be able to handle that for you. So if you're not cloning anything, if you're only using the brush, you don't even have to have that plugged in as a background. It's up to you. Now the next thing we want to do is drop in a merge. So hit the tab key and type merge, or you can just hit the M, and then we'll just drop that merge on in between the roto paint here and our transform, and then plug the A pipe into the roto paint 7, and you can see that it's back. I'm going to hold the control key and make a little dot node there, so if there's any other roto paints that I want to add in, I can do that. Okay, so now what we'll do is with this roto paint 7, we can come in and have our smear tool selected. And now if I go in to smear this, you see it's not going to smear anything underneath that area. So it's only going to smear this one roto paint that I've made. So that way it's kind of a less destructive way of painting if you want to add something on top that you don't want to cause any kind of issue with what's underneath it. Okay? So we'll just kind of make some ridges there. And this last one here. Okay, and then what I want to do is get a slightly lighter color with my brush. And I'm going to paint just kind of a much more subtle highlight that is a little more or a little less blurry on top of this. So we'll go into our color and just make this a little closer to white. And you want to make sure that your opacity is still pretty low, and just kind of paint it on a little bit more in the middle of some of these lines that we've created. So it's kind of just this layering process. Just imagine where you think those kind of specular sort of highlights would be in a shot like this. And then you can grab your smear again and maybe just do a little bit of smearing right on the edges, but not in the middle of those. Like that. Okay, So you can see once you're zoomed out how this is affecting it. And you can also maybe tell a little bit better if you need to go in and add some more smearing, or if you haven't maybe put enough because you're zoomed in a little bit too close. Okay, so just kind of continue to paint those on there. And just really try to make it feel integrated. You don't want it to feel too pixelated because this is a little bit harder brush than what we ended up having before. So now we've got kind of these little ripples and a few more little highlights in the blood, and you can decide whether or not you actually want to add those in, but also you have the option to control that merge. So because we added that, we can turn them down a little bit if we want. So you have control over their individual opacity. So I can turn the mix down to 59, and that just makes it a little bit less harsh if you feel like it's too much. Okay, so now that those highlights have been added, we need to make sure that they are going to last for all of our frames. So we'll come in here and select all of those, go into your lifetime tab and change it to all frames. And then we probably also want to go ahead and name this blood highlights. Okay, so now that we've added our blood highlights, I want to start animating that blood that we painted in our last lesson to kind of match the movement and go along with what our zombie's doing. So join me in the next lesson and we'll start that process.